In the most luxurious mansion in Manhattan, during a reception that brought together America's elite, something happened that nobody expected. While 200 wealthy guests laughed and chatted in golden halls, an 8-year-old girl sat alone in a corner, completely ignored by everyone. Sophia Harrison, daughter of billionaire William Harrison, had been deaf since birth, and in a world made of empty words and superficial conversations, no one had ever bothered to learn sign language to communicate with her. But that evening, something magical was about to happen. Among the guests was Emma Rodriguez, a 25-year-old waitress working for the catering company. When she saw Sophia sitting alone, with the sad eyes of someone used to being invisible, Emma did something that shocked everyone present. She approached the little girl and began communicating with her using perfect American Sign Language. The smile that lit up Sophia's face in that moment changed both their lives forever and proved that sometimes the purest love comes from the most unexpected people. The Harrison Mansion stood like a modern castle in the heart of Manhattan's Upper East Side, surrounded by perfectly manicured gardens that looked like they came from an architecture magazine. That October evening, the halls were illuminated by crystal chandeliers casting golden reflections on walls decorated with priceless artwork. William Harrison, 52, had organized one of his famous receptions to celebrate the acquisition of a new tech company. 200 guests from New York's elite moved elegantly through the halls. Entrepreneurs, politicians, aristocrats, all dressed in designer clothes and jewelry that cost more than a house. Conversations intertwined in a constant murmur of business deals, gossip, and superficiality. White-gloved waiters served Dom Perignon, champagne, and canapés prepared by the city's best chefs. William Harrison was in his element. Tall, distinguished, with perfectly styled gray hair and a tailored suit that emphasized his imposing figure, he moved among guests with the authority of someone who had built an empire from scratch. Harrison Holdings controlled sectors ranging from real estate to technology, from telecommunications to media. He was one of America's richest and most powerful men, equally respected and feared. But amid all that luxury and wealth, there was a presence that went completely unnoticed. In a corner of the main hall, sitting on a red velvet armchair too big for her, was Sophia Harrison, 8 years old, with blonde hair pulled back in a perfect ponytail. She wore a light blue dress that made her look like a porcelain doll. Her large, expressive blue eyes observed the movement around her, with a sadness that no one seemed to notice. Sophia had been deaf since birth, due to meningitis contracted in her first months of life. In 8 years, none of her father's regular guests had ever learned even the most basic signs to communicate with her. To them, Sophia was simply part of the furniture, a silent and easily ignorable presence. William loved his daughter in his own way, but it was a distant love, made more of responsibility than true understanding. He had provided her with the best doctors, the most prestigious private schools for deaf children, world-renowned therapists, and speech pathologists. But he had never found time to learn sign language. Their conversations were limited to forced smiles, fleeting caresses, and written notes for the most basic needs. Sophia's mother, Margaret, had died in a car accident when the child was 4 years old. Since then, Sophia had grown up surrounded by nannies, governesses, and teachers paid to care for her, but no one who truly saw her as a child, with emotional needs beyond physical ones. That evening, Sophia watched the guests move like actors on a stage. She saw their mouths open and close, their expressions change, their laughter silent to her. She had learned to read lips well enough to understand they often talked about things that didn't concern her. Money, trips, properties. No one ever talked with her. No one ever bent down to her level to look her in the eyes. In the adjacent hall, Emma Rodriguez was arranging trays on the buffet table. 25 years old, with brown hair pulled back in a neat bun, she wore the black uniform with white apron of the catering agency she worked for. She came from a working-class family from Chicago and had been working as a waitress since she was 18 to support her studies. She was finishing her degree in special education with a specialization in deaf education. Emma had learned American Sign Language during college when she volunteered at a school for deaf children. She had been fascinated by the beauty and complexity of that form of communication and continued studying it even after the volunteer project ended. She didn't know that this skill, acquired almost by chance, was about to change her life and that of a child she had never met. While filling champagne glasses, Emma noticed Sophia sitting alone in the corner. Something in the child's body language struck her immediately. It was a loneliness she recognized, the isolation of someone living in a world that doesn't understand them. She approached discreetly and observed Sophia for a few minutes. The child had her hands resting on her knees in a position Emma recognized. It was how deaf children often sit when they feel excluded. It was then that Emma made a decision that would change everything. She set down the tray, approached Sophia, and knelt in front of her. With fluid and natural movements, she began communicating in American Sign Language. Sophia's reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Her eyes lit up as if she had seen an angel appear. For the first time in years, someone was speaking to her in her language. Someone was truly seeing her. In that moment, while the guests' conversations continued around them, a communication began that would transform two lives forever. The first exchange between Emma and Sophia was magical. Emma had signed a simple, "Hi, what's your name?" and watched Sophia transform completely. The child, who until that moment had seemed like a marble statue, suddenly came alive. Her hands began moving with grace and elegance, responding in sign language with fluency that testified to years of practice. Sophia told her name, then asked if Emma was deaf too. When Emma explained she had learned ASL in college, Sophia wanted to know everything. Why she had learned it, where, how. She was hungry for real communication, for someone who finally understood her effortlessly. The guests around them began noticing this strange, silent conversation. Some whispered comments, others stopped curiously to watch. William Harrison, from across the hall, saw his daughter become animated like never before and approached to understand what was happening. When he arrived near the two, Emma immediately stood up, realizing she had probably overstepped her role as a waitress. William looked at her with a stern expression, ready to scold her for disturbing his daughter. But before he could say anything, Sophia approached him and began communicating in sign language, visibly excited. William understood nothing of what his daughter was telling him. He saw her hands moving rapidly, her face lit with joy. But to him they were just incomprehensible gestures. He turned to Emma with a mixture of curiosity and authority. Emma, with a respectful but firm voice, translated what Sophia had said. The child was thrilled to have finally found someone to really talk with, someone who understood her language. She had told her about school, her drawings, the books she liked, all things she had never been able to fully share with anyone. William was struck not only by his daughter's words, but by how Emma translated them. It wasn't mechanical translation, but interpreted emotions, nuances, Sophia's personality that came through her gestures. For the first time, William was seeing his daughter through someone else's eyes. And what he saw surprised him. Sophia was intelligent, lively, full of questions and curiosity. She had a strong, defined personality that had never emerged in their limited exchanges. Through Emma's translation, William discovered that his daughter had fears, dreams, opinions about everything around her. The party continued, but many guests' attention was now focused on this strange trio. William asked Emma to stay near Sophia for the rest of the evening, translating their conversations. It was the first time father and daughter managed to truly communicate. Sophia told her father about her school friends, all deaf like her, about her teachers who were patient and kind, about her dreams of becoming an artist, or maybe a veterinarian. William discovered that his daughter had a rich inner world he had never explored. During the evening, other guests approached curiously. Emma found herself translating conversations between Sophia and adults who were talking with a deaf person for the first time in their lives. Some were genuinely interested, others simply curious. But for Sophia, every interaction was precious. The turning point came when Sophia asked her father, through Emma, why he had never learned sign language. The question, posed with a child's innocence, but loaded with years of loneliness, hit William like a punch to the stomach. William didn't know what to answer. He stammered something about his work commitments, lack of time, but realized how empty those excuses were. Looking at his daughter, who stared at him with those big eyes full of hope, he understood he had failed in the most important way. Emma translated William's response, but added something of her own. Gently, she explained to Sophia that maybe Daddy had never had the opportunity to learn, but it was never too late to start. Then she turned to William and told him she gave private ASL lessons, if he was ever interested. In that moment, William Harrison made one of the most important decisions of his life. He looked into his daughter's eyes, then Emma's, and said something that surprised everyone present. He wanted to learn sign language. He wanted to finally speak with his daughter in her language. Sophia exploded with joy. She jumped into her father's arms, then ran to Emma to hug her. In that golden hall, surrounded by all the luxury money could buy, a priceless bond was forming. One between a father who wanted to rebuild his relationship with his daughter and a young woman who had opened a new world to them. The party ended, but for William, Sophia, and Emma, a story that would change their lives forever had just begun. The following week, William contacted Emma proposing she become a private tutor to learn sign language. The arrangement included daily lessons at the mansion, with Sophia always present in the learning process. The first lessons took place in the Harrison Mansion's library. William felt clumsy trying to move his hands in gestures he didn't master. His fingers, used to signing million-dollar contracts, seemed rebellious when it came to speaking visually. Sophia showed infinite patience with her father. She corrected him gently, showed him the right movements, laughed at his concentrated expressions. It was a role reversal, the child teaching the adult. Emma watched these exchanges with growing emotion. She saw William humble himself before his daughter just to communicate with her, and saw Sophia flourish, becoming more confident and happy. But the lessons went beyond sign language. William discovered that Sophia had a subtle sense of humor, loved drawing fantastic creatures, dreamed of traveling the world. Emma became the bridge between William's business world and Sophia's world of imagination. As weeks passed, William changed his priorities. He delegated some business to have more time, began participating in Sophia's school events, meeting other parents of deaf children.
Enjoying the story? Give it a little like, and don't forget to subscribe. Now then, let's carry on.
The mansion transformed. From a silent, formal place, it became lively, full of deaf children playing and communicating naturally in their visual language. The breakthrough came one December afternoon. William found Sophia crying in her room with a torn drawing. A classmate had told her that her father didn't really love her. Otherwise, he would have learned her language sooner. William sat beside Sophia, and for the first time managed to tell her in sign language that he loved her more than anything in the world. Sophia threw herself into his arms, crying tears of joy. For the first time she had heard her father say, "I love you," in her language. That day, William understood he was learning much more than sign language. He was learning to be a father. While William and Sophia rebuilt their relationship, something unexpected grew between William and Emma. Initially, it was professional respect, but over months, it transformed into something deeper. William began seeing Emma as an extraordinary woman. She was 25, 13 years younger than him, but possessed maturity and wisdom that fascinated him. She was kind but determined, and above all had dedicated her life to helping others. Emma discovered a William different from what she had imagined. Away from the spotlight, he was a vulnerable man who had learned to show emotions through hands that now spoke fluently with his daughter. The moment of truth came one spring evening. Sophia had gone to sleep over at a friend's house, and William and Emma found themselves alone for the first time. William confessed that since she had entered their lives, he had found not only his daughter again, but also himself. When William said he had fallen in love with her, Emma wasn't surprised. She felt similar emotions too, but had repressed them, thinking they were inappropriate. They were from such different worlds. William explained that those very differences fascinated him. She had taught him that true wealth wasn't in money, but in the ability to communicate and love. He wanted to build a real family with her, where Sophia could have not only a father who understood her, but also a mother figure. Their first kiss was sweet and full of promises. They decided to proceed slowly, first building a solid family foundation. Sophia had to be involved in every decision. When Sophia returned and saw how happy they were together, her reaction was immediate. In sign language, she asked if Emma would stay with them forever. When both said yes, Sophia exploded with joy. For the first time in her life, she had a complete family. 1 year after that first meeting at the party, the Harrison mansion had become a completely different place. Where formal, detached silence once reigned, there were now laughter, animated conversations in sign language, and above all, the energy of a finally happy child. William had learned ASL so well, he could hold complex conversations with Sophia. Every evening, before she went to sleep, they sat together in her bed, and she told him about her day in detail. William discovered his daughter had a rich inner world, full of dreams, fears, hopes, and projects she had never been able to share with him before. Emma had officially become the family's educational director, but she was really much more. She was Sophia's confidant, William's love, and the glue that held this special family together. She had left her waitressing job and dedicated herself completely to her mission, helping families with deaf children communicate better. With William's money and connections, Emma had founded a training center for parents of deaf children. The Sophia Center had become a reference point for all of New York State within months. Emma held sign language courses, organized family meetings, and above all, helped parents overcome the guilt and confusion that often accompanied discovering a child's deafness. Sophia had become the center's little ambassador. She often participated in meetings with parents, showing them how normal and happy a deaf child's life could be with a family that understood her. Her presentations, translated by Emma, always moved everyone present. William had discovered a new purpose in life. Besides managing his company, he had begun financing research on childhood deafness and integration programs in schools. He had become an advocate for deaf rights, using his influence to promote greater social awareness. The marriage proposal came in a way only William could imagine. During one of the Sophia Center's charity galas, in front of 200 people, including many families with deaf children, William took the stage and gave his entire speech in sign language. He spoke about how a child's love and an extraordinary woman's dedication had changed his life. He said he had learned that true communication doesn't just pass through words, but through the heart. Then he knelt before Emma and asked her to marry him, still using ASL. Emma burst into tears of joy and said yes. But the most beautiful reaction was Sophia's, who ran on stage and hugged them both. In sign language, she said she finally had the perfect family she had always dreamed of. The wedding was celebrated at the Harrison mansion, transformed into an enchanted garden. The ceremony was bilingual. The officiant's words were simultaneously translated into sign language by a professional interpreter. Sophia was maid of honor, proud and happy to see her two heart parents officially unite. The guests were an interesting mix. Industry magnates sitting next to working families with deaf children, aristocrats chatting in sign language with children from every social background. It was exactly the type of wedding that represented what the Harrison family had become. A bridge between different worlds, united by love and understanding. During the party, Sophia took the microphone, with Emma's help for translation, and gave a speech that moved everyone. She said she used to feel different and alone, but now knew she was special. She had a dad who spoke with his hands, and a mom who understood her heart. And above all, she had learned that love doesn't need words to be real. That night, while Sophia slept in her room, William and Emma sat in the mansion's garden looking at the stars. William told Emma she had given him the greatest gift. She had taught him to truly love his daughter. Emma replied that he had shown her that dreams can become reality when you're willing to change for the people you love. A real family was born, founded not on blood, but on love, understanding, and mutual respect. Sophia finally had the parents she deserved. William had discovered what it meant to be a real father, and Emma had found her place in the world. 5 years after that first meeting at the party, the Harrison family had become a symbol of hope for thousands of families throughout America. Sophia, now 13, had grown into a confident young woman, brilliant in her studies and passionate about art. Her paintings, representing the world through colors and forms that expressed what words couldn't say, had been displayed in a charity exhibition that raised funds for the Sophia Center. William had learned to perfectly balance his role as father and entrepreneur. Every morning, before going to the office, he had breakfast with Sophia and Emma, and their conversation in sign language had become as natural as breathing. He had sold some of his less profitable companies to focus on projects with positive social impact, especially those related to disability inclusion. Emma had become one of Europe's most respected special education experts. The Sophia Center had expanded to other American cities, and she often traveled to give conferences and train other educators. But her greatest pride always remained Sophia, the child who had made her feel useful for the first time in her life. The family had also welcomed a new member, Marcus, a 6-year-old deaf boy that William and Emma had adopted after his parents died in an accident. Sophia had been thrilled to have a little brother and took care of him with the dedication of a perfect big sister. The Harrison Mansion had become a gathering place for New York's deaf community. Every weekend they organized events, birthday parties, dinners where families with deaf children could meet and share experiences. William had installed special lights that flashed to get attention instead of traditional sounds, and had mirrors positioned strategically to allow sign language conversations even when people couldn't see each other directly. One day, while watching Sophia play in the garden with Marcus and other deaf children, William realized how much the meaning of wealth had changed in his life. Before he measured everything in terms of revenue, profits, acquisitions, now his wealth was made of smiles, hugs, silent but meaningful conversations. Sophia had decided she wanted to become a professional ASL interpreter to help other families like hers. She wanted to study languages and communication, and dreamed of working in international organizations to promote deaf rights worldwide. William and Emma were proud of her plans and knew she would achieve any goal she set. One evening, during one of their traditional family dinners, Sophia asked a question that surprised everyone. She wanted to know how William and Emma had felt before learning to speak with their hands. William reflected a moment before answering. He said that before learning sign language, he felt like he lived behind thick glass, where he could see his daughter, but not truly touch her. Emma added that she too, despite knowing ASL, had learned a completely new form of communication entering this family. She had learned the language of unconditional love. Marcus, now 11, and becoming an intelligent, lively boy, said he was happy to have arrived in a family where no one had to pretend to be different from who they were. He could be himself, deaf and proud of it, without having to prove anything to anyone. That evening, after putting the kids to bed, William and Emma sat on their favorite veranda, looking at the moonlit garden. William took his wife's hands and told her in the sign language they now both mastered perfectly, that she had given him the family he didn't know he wanted. Emma replied that she too had found much more than she was looking for. She had entered their lives to teach a language, but had learned that love is the only language everyone understands, regardless of how they communicate. At that moment, Sophia appeared at the veranda door. She couldn't sleep and wanted to stay a little longer with her parents. She sat between them, and together they looked at the starry sky, communicating in their silent but meaningful language. William thought that scene perfectly represented what his life had become. A continuous dialogue made of gestures of love, where silence was never empty, but always full of understanding. Sophia had transformed the lives of everyone who surrounded her, proving that diversity isn't a limitation, but richness. William had learned that being a real father meant entering his child's world, not forcing her to enter his. Emma had discovered that love can be born in the most unexpected ways and grow to become something greater than imagined. Their story proved that no barriers exist that love can't overcome, and that sometimes the differences that separate us can become the bridges that unite us most deeply. In the end, we all speak different languages, that of words, that of gestures, that of the heart. But when we find someone willing to learn ours, a connection is born that goes beyond every form of communication. A real family is born. Like if you believe love overcomes every communication barrier, comment which moment of the story touched you most. Share to raise awareness about the importance of inclusion and sign language. Subscribe for more stories of families born from love and understanding. Sometimes 2 hands moving in silence can say more than 1,000 words. Sometimes the deepest communication happens without sounds, but with the heart. And sometimes the most beautiful families are born when someone decides to learn a new language, that of love. Because true love doesn't need words to be understood, but hearts willing to listen in silence.